Okay, we are going to get started with our live event today. I want to welcome everybody to our April CAD Users Group live event. Thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Mark McLeod, and I'm the CAD Services Manager here at ODOT. We are recording this event, and it will be made available on our wiki page either later today or tomorrow. So if you want to go back and rewatch this, it will be available there. We do have live chat available, so please type in any questions you may have, and we'll field those during the meeting. We also will be providing CPDs for today via email, so look for those in the future. If you join the meeting anonymously, we cannot verify that you attended the meeting, so please note that. Also, if you're watching this event as a group, each person who would like CPDs will need to join the meeting separately. Just a quick rundown for the agenda today. We actually had a change. I will be going first today on the agenda, talking about some of the new applications that we're going to be deploying. Our title sheet map update for that's DGN based, and then also our engineering seals and signatures app. And then JD will be discussing the OpenRoads updates that we're going to have. It's got a slope labeler VBA is going to show. After that, Matt Ivan's going to be talking about OpenBridge Workspace, roll plot projects that we have going right now. File naming convention, we're looking at some guidelines for multi-team projects. And then Kyle Ince will be ending out the day with some technology initiatives, talking about like our international foot, low distortion projection, or LDP, and also our BIM initiatives we have going right now. Just some quick updates. I'm not sure if everybody knows this, but Eric Thomas is no longer with our office. His contract ended in December of last year, and he's decided to move on with his career and is now working for Bentley Systems. So I just wanted to make a note of that in case people were trying to email him individually on behalf of ODOT. Just know that he's no longer with ODOT. And he has moved on, and he's now working with Bentley. Also, we actually have a position available in our office. I wanted to mention that here. We have a CAD Data Administration Manager position available. There is a website where you can go and search for that. It's careers.ohio.gov. We'll go ahead and link that in the chat window as well, so you guys can link to that directly. And then I did want to mention the Bentley DBE discount. We mentioned this last meeting. This is for DBEs. You get a 25% discount on Bentley products. And there is a code there. It's VIRTU25DBE. So I wanted to mention that. And then for the internal folks that are attending today, we do have some training coming up in June. We have an Introduction to MicroStation Basics class. And then that same week, we have an OHDOT CAD Workspace Basics that basically goes through our ORD workspace, talks about the different applications we have available for that. And then finishing it out, we have OpenRoads Designer training for designers the following week, where we go in depth into OpenRoads Designer and the use of it. It's a 3-day class. All right, and I'm going to move over to the demos that I have for our applications. All right. I guess to start off, in the last meeting, we had mentioned that we were going to be updating our title sheet DGN map application for ORD. And one of the challenges we had with the old DGN maps was every county was divided up into separate DGN files. So very difficult to update those in a holistic manner. With 88 counties, you basically had to go into 88 different DGNs to try to get things updated. The other thing was a lot of the staff that we had initially that worked on all those DGN files no longer are with the office. So we had to kind of, take a look at it and see, if there was a better process for updating, those DGNs, internet, the interstates, state routes, US routes, things like that. So what we've done is we've taken all of those files and we've combined them into a single DGN file that's for the state map. And that's what I have open here in ORD. And what we've done is, we've used our TIMS database to update all of our interstate routes, our state routes, US routes, and even some of the smaller, township roads and things like that we have available. And then took what was remaining from the DGNs, the separate counties, and then we've combined them all into a single file. So this file is actually located underneath of our OHDOT standards county maps, and it's one file and it's called statemap.dgn. And this file is, it's larger, it's 241 megabytes. So there is that, but I am running all of my workspace right now locally, just to avoid any networking interruptions here, but look for those in our workspace, and that is available. So I'm going to go ahead and open a title sheet here, and I'm going to run through the application. All right, so I've already created my title sheet here. This is the old title sheet cell, and I'll do some comparisons between this title sheet and then the title sheet that we've modified for our engineering seal and signatures app. So first, I'm just going to use just our standard border that we have. And if you go to our OhioDOT workflow under title sheet, you should see this new option here for title sheet map DGN. I'm going to go ahead and click that, and then I'm going to get this updated GUI for the state map. And what we've done is we've basically taken the state map, we've divided up into the various districts, ODOT districts that we have, and then even the counties. And then, we've provided check boxes for those counties. So you can actually just check on a county that you want to have included in your map for your title sheet. And you can select actually multiple, counties if, say you have an area that's bordering different counties as well. And that's really just for kind of the window preview for where you're going to start for your selection. There's also some additional options that JD's added. You can have the application reset the checkboxes. You can also have it reset the checkboxes for the counties after the map has been placed. Right now, if you run through it, it'll automatically pick the corner on the title sheet map and place it automatically, but you can select this box and graphically select that location if you wish. And then also the map scale. So it's similar to the old application we had for ODOT CAD, which is the V8I standards, but we've just kind of enhanced it a little bit here. So I'm just going to pick a county, and then I'm going to click place title sheet map. Okay, so what it's done is it's actually done kind of a file reference, and it's put me on that specific county, so I can do my selection here. So I can actually, I can kind of zoom in here if I want to do my selection. And I'm just gonna pick that. And now you see it's actually went and taken the DGN, clipped it, and it placed it on my title sheet. And then it's brought this back. So if I wanted to, redo it or whatever, I could. If I wanted to reset the checkboxes, or after the plat map's been placed, maybe it, didn't go as planned or whatever. But yeah, so this is it. I mean, it's pretty, pretty cut and dry. Nice application. We feel like it's a good enhancement over what we had for the old ODOT CAD stuff. And we have run into just a couple issues with the map placement with elements being moved from one level to another level. I think it was specifically section lines were getting moved to like a corporation line or something like that. And we're trying to figure out why that's happening. The DGN has them separated, but when the application places it and clips it, it somehow is changing those levels. So we're still investigating that. We've had a couple support requests come in on that, but know that we are looking into that to see if there is something there that we can fix and update for that application. So that's it. It's pretty quick, explanatory. I mean, it's like I said, it's just like our old one, but it's now DGN based, and that was the big thing. We've had a lot of users say that they really wanted the ability to do the DGN files again, not only for the title sheets, but also for like detour maps and things like that. So if you want to do detour maps, you could just reference that state map.dgn into your detour map, and then move it around wherever you need it, and then you could do a clip boundary or whatever for your views for your detour map, and use it that way as well. That way you're not working with 88 different counties. Now you've just got one county or one state map as for the whole infrastructure. All right. So I'm going to move on to the engineering seals and signature application now. So I just wanted to note while we're in this title sheet here, the current title sheet that we have available has the two boxes here for the engineer's seal and the signing and the date here, and then for district deputy director approval, date, things like that, and then the director for transportation here. Go ahead and open the new cell. So the new cell, we've actually removed the engineer's seal locations here, and we've shifted this middle over a little bit, and that's to allow for additional seals, engineering seal locations on this right side. That was one of the things that we've seen. We've only have 2 locations for engineering seals, and there might be more, engineers signing a single plan. So we wanted to allow for more of those. Also, the deputy director's signature has been moved up here along with the director's signature. It's actually been included in this because we've had some issues with the title sheet being scanned in and breaking some of the links that we have embedded in the title sheet. So that's something here. The district deputy director's signature, we're still working on. We wanted to do away with this altogether, but the district deputy director said that they use this for accepting that the plan or authorizing that the plan was finished. As of right now, we're still going to just have that in place, but I think in the future, we're hoping that we can just remove this or have a different process for them to sign off on the plans instead of having to, have their signature on the title sheet, maybe through a plan submittal process or something like that. Or possibly just adding a digital signature field for them. The issue then is, if you have a digital signature and the title sheet has to change, all the digital signatures have to be reapplied. So there is that. And honestly, if you're digitally signing a document, they should be reapplied. So that is something that we're looking at a future change possibly. So for the title sheet, engineering plan seal and signature, we have this new icon here for OHDOT plan seal. Go ahead and click on that. And now we're going to get this dialog here that gives us some options. We can place an engineer seal, a surveyor seal, and then we can have some different titles for that if we want to. Bridge, drainage, whatever. We can just select that. We can also include a subtitle if we wish, specifically maybe for bridges. So I know sometimes engineers sign off on separate bridges and they want to have those specified with some type of a subtitle. So that is available. And then you're just keying in your name. I'm not an engineer, but I'm just doing this for demo purposes here. And then you're going to put your engineering number in here. Do 6. And JD's also added an option to save the name and your number to your user preference file. That way this auto fills when you pull this up, and that way you don't have to re-enter this information here. So that's kind of a nice feature here. And then I'm just going to hit place seal, and then I'm going to get the cell hovering over my cursor, and then I can just come down here and let it snap. Oh, there we go. Let it snap to the corner. Okay. And it's been placed. And then, like I said, if you want to do, say, bridge, do like a and then stuff in. And then you can also, if you wanted to do, say, surveyor signature. So you can see we've made enough room here so you can actually have up to 6 seals in this location. And I think you can even squeeze 2 more over here if you wanted to. So the application, we have it set up so after you place the cell, if I hover over this bottom part, you can see that there's a box down here, and it creates a cell. It's called OHDOT seal signature, and then there's O1, and then O0 or underbar 0, underbar 1, and then underbar 2. So what it does is it increments your signature fields. So when you do the printing process, we have a design script that will make that a signature field for the PDF. So then you can digitally sign the PDF. There's that, and then I'm going to go ahead now and just do a print on this. And when you load the print dialog now, it defaults to D size, which is 34 by 22, which is our full size. That is going to be the recommended size for plans moving forward. Since we're doing PDFs now, it doesn't really make sense to have quarter size. Because if you're printing a PDF in full size and you want to do scaling off of that PDF, you don't have to worry about the scale factor. It's going to be what it is on the plan sheet. So if you're using Bluebeam or something like that, it's going to match. The other thing too is if we want to do quarter size printing, you just change the print driver to quarter size when you print it. We're going to be updating the electronic design deliverables to reflect that, and also the PDF submission process. That's something that we're going to have to obviously update the documents for. So look for that in the July L&D Volume 3 DRC update. So also, you'll notice that the plot config now loads this OHDOT eSign design script. And you can actually see there, it's underneath of our OHDOT standards PLT config, and that is our design script. So what that's going to do is it's going to create those signature fields for us in the PDF when you print. So I'm going to go ahead and print to file. This off the PDF, hit save. Okay, so now go to my work set area here, open my PDF file. And now if you look in the lower bottom here, you'll see that I have my engineer seals and my signatures fields. So, you know, if I'm an engineer and I want to sign off on this title sheet, I can just come down here, click that signature field, and then I'm going to get my, signature that I have created in Adobe or Bluebeam. We're recommending that you use your actual handwritten signature for the appearance, and then also having this the date on there, so it stamps the date and time for you when you're applying your signature. So that's all configurable in Adobe and Bluebeam as well. I'm going to go ahead and hit sign here and save it. And my signature has been applied. So that's that's something that we've got in the works. As of right now, the L&D doesn't specify that you have to apply your digital signature. That's something else that we're going to be updating in the title sheet section of L&D Volume 3. So it will be a requirement in July. We wanted to show this now so we can make it available through our standards, so those that want to adopt this early can, but it will not be a requirement until the July DRC update when we get the L&D updated, and then also the design deliverable documents updated for this. So wanted to show how digital signatures can be applied there. The other thing, is, if you're changing your title sheet and, you got to reprint your title sheet, the digital signatures have to be re-signed, which technically should be. I mean, if you're going to be in compliance with the state board engineering, they're saying that, if you're applying your signature and it's a digital signature, then you're signing off on that. And if you're making changes to that PDF, it's going to invalidate that signature. So just be aware of that. And then I also just wanted to quickly mention because this isn't a requirement yet, we have 2 cells in our cell libraries for this. So if I go back here to my cell library, wanted to just quickly show this. So in the OHDOT sheets, so if you place a title sheet now with the current application that we have, it's going to place the old title sheet border here. If you want to use the new title sheet border, which is this interior title new, you'll have to place the border for the title sheet, and then you'll have to come here, select this cell, and then place this cell manually without using our application. The application is still defaulting to our old title sheet, which is with the old signature and CO boxes over on the left here. So like I said, we wanted to make this available through our standards for those that wanted to adopt it early, but it will not be made available, or it won't be a requirement, I guess, until the July DRC. The other thing I also wanted to mention is we will be updating the old V&I standards, ODOT CADD, with these changes. So if you're still doing projects in the old V&I standards, the signature fields will be available starting in the July DRC as well. So that way, no matter whether you're doing ORD project or a V8I project, you'll be able to do the digital signatures for the title sheet. All right. That is all I had. If there's any questions, I'm not sure if there's any questions, but I will go ahead and stop my portion, and I'll go ahead and hand it over to JD for his presentation.
Okay. There have been a couple questions. We've been trying to answer them, but quite a few came in on both the title sheet map and the signatures. Let me scan through them. Is it possible to have district map available to be placed on the title sheet for the district-wide projects? So you can get a district map from the actual state map, but right now we're not splitting those out into separate files. It's harder to update. We had one for counties in the past, and we went this one route just to make it a little easier to update, because as everyone knows, the old file didn't get updated for over a decade. So for district-wide projects, we can look at something, clipping it out, but you can always reference in the whole map and do what you want with it. I think we got two things about MOT endorsement on the new title sheet. Sure, we could find a room for that still. I don't know how, it depends on how many signatures you got on that page, but we'll take a look at that. We might need to shift that signature to make sure there's room for that, but
yeah, that's fine.
You can always make room. There's no problem in dropping that cell if
right, move it
you
around.
need to shift things around.
Yeah, I guess that was the other thing, JD, I forgot to mention is, for the seals themselves, those fields that you're filling out, those are actually text fields. So if you need to, if you have a title in there, say for that subtitle, if you need, if it extends across the box, you can always, change the text width so it shrinks it so it fits in the box. I know we had a support ticket on that where somebody was trying to put a heading in there and it was too long, and we just recommended that you edit the text and just make the text width narrower so it would fit. So.
All right, I'm responding to another one. What version of the workspace was the title sheet map app made available. So it's in both the V1 and the V2 workspace. So, and there shouldn't be a version control on that. So even if you're on an older version of ORD, you still be able to use this. All right, let's see here. Post that response. Is the new title sheet interior? I see that the new title sheet interior includes the director's signature already. Was that intentional? Will he just add a signature for the recorded plans? Want to answer that one, Mark?
Yeah, we had concerns about that too, and contracts actually sent us his signature to apply to the cell, and then they said they were fine with us having that on there. So, you know, we had some concerns about it, but they said, no, go ahead and do it. We want it on there, and so we did it, and that's why it's on there.
Basically came out that the actual signature was needed. I think is where he was going. Do they still have to sign it? Is where he was going with that.
Right. We wanted to remove that too, and they decided that they still wanted his signature on there, just for part of their process, I guess. I don't know. We wanted to take all of the signatures off, but we got, you know, contract said no, we want his signature on there. You can go ahead and apply it. You can put it right in the cell, and we said okay. And then also we wanted to take the district deputy director signatures off, and then that caused some issues too with some of the districts, because they said that that's how they finalize the kind of the authorization of the district deputy director for that set of plans. So we are still investigating a different way for that process to happen. Like I said, maybe the plan submittal process. But currently there hasn't been a decision made. I gave some options. So we're still investigating that. So just do it as you're doing it right now.
The title sheet map generator hasn't been generating maps for a few projects. Is there an alternative? So I'm guessing that you're probably using the older one, using the GIS more format. The format look more like a GIS map. That one has been problematic, especially if the locations aren't entered in Ellis. And pretty much from the general consensus is that everyone hated that app. So that's why we brought this old app back, and hopefully everyone's cheering with joy. They don't have to deal with that old app. And I'll just pretend like I didn't spend all the time figuring out how to work with maps and geolocated data. So I'm guessing that's what you're talking about with that question. So I would just move over to the DGN based one, and then you can just clip your area out like you used to do. There's one more question left. Mark, do you see it?
Yeah, I saw it. I see it. Yeah, we were told at one point we shouldn't remove the district. Yeah. So they told us just to put it on there. We moved it because we needed room for the signature seal area. So we just moved it up. So is that requirement released? I don't know if that's a requirement or if it has been a requirement. I talked to contracts. I didn't actually talk to estimating about that. Our contracts didn't have a problem with us having the signature anywhere on the title sheet, because I sent them an actual example of what we were going to do, and they were fine with it. They signed off on it. So I don't know about estimating. Also, yeah, they should be immediately above the signatures. Yeah, so we'll try to figure out where that lands. It's not on the title sheet now, so maybe that's something that's added later. And maybe it's something that we should just include in the cell. And if you're not going to use it, you can delete it. That way we can kind of figure out what the, you know, what the spacing is for that right side. So that'll be something that we're going to have to look into for the MOT endorsement. The other question, you know, I guess the end of that, little room for municipalities or other entity signatures. So that was the other thing. I know some, cities and municipalities require signatures for various sections, I guess. I actually saw a set of plans that had 15 signatures from the city of Columbus on it, which is crazy to me. But we are also researching the idea of having a separate signature page that's not the title page, but is also included in the plans as part of a PDF package. And if you're not familiar with a PDF, what a PDF package is, it's essentially a PDF file that acts as a zip file. So if you know what a zip file is, you can add multiple files to it. A PDF package is essentially a PDF that you can add multiple files to. So we're looking into creating a PDF package if you have to have additional signatures, say from a municipality. We're looking at possibly just a separate declaration page, having it be a separate PDF so they can sign off on it, and then have it added to the PDF package as a separate file, but is also included in a single file for the plan submittal. Hopefully I explained that not so easily there, but hopefully you get the gist of it if you're familiar with what a PDF package is. And then we're also looking at possibly taking the right-of-way plans and making them a separate plan itself instead of including it in the whole set of plans, making it a separate PDF also in the PDF package. So you'll have a signature page for any signatures you need to collect outside for municipalities and stuff, except for the engineers obviously signing off on the plans. You'll have a PDF that's the plan set themselves with the title sheet and the engineering seals and signatures applied, and then a separate PDF for the right-of-way plans. And all of those will be in the PDF that'll be submitted for the final submittal. And that is the PDF package that we're looking into. And that's something that hopefully when we get everything kind of in place, it'll be something that'll be in the DRC July update as well as a requirement. So just know that we're still kind of looking into that.
Okay. I think that rounds up some of
There
the
was,
most
did you
of the
get,
questions there.
yeah, did you get the one about there was something about the right-of-way signatures and the plats?
Yeah, I said that app can be used
Oh yeah,
on any sheet,
right, yeah,
as long as it's one-to-one because it doesn't scale it, and we will
right.
look at that actual cell to see if we need to shift things around.
Mm-hmm.
But the right-of-way section is another topic that we are looking at as well, which you guys will get more info on in the future. So without getting too far behind schedule, I think we're gonna share my screen and get started on the next
Okay.
agenda item. All right, I guess I can't get my background to come in for some reason. All right. Sorry about that. I guess you guys are just gonna see the office background. Doesn't want to come through. All right, so first thing I'll talk about, just kind of go along with some Marcus talking about what new apps and whatnot, is the slope labeler that we just added to our workspace. So I'm gonna play this video and talk about it. So first thing is that I gotta give credit where credit is due. So I didn't write this app. We actually found it on the communities. So you can launch it. They're showing you how to launch it within the apps tab. And it was actually written by Larry Wilson. When he was working at LJB, I think the post was like over a decade old. So this app has been around for a good long time, but we updated it to work a little better with ORD and cross sections. So really, what it's going to do is let you label slopes a little bit easier. So a lot of times, like with existing surfaces, you can see that there's a lot of different vertexes. So it's not really easy to just have the software annotate a slope for you because it does vary so much. And since it is a slice of a 3D model, when you select that line, you'll see that it shows it as a terrain model and not a line string. So a lot of the old tools where you could calculate slope, don't really work because it's expecting a line string. So that's where we had updated this app where we added the start by 2 points button so that you can just click 2 points and it will calculate your slope for you. So I should be demoing this if I planned out what I wanted to say with my length of video, right? So I'm going to click those 2 points and then I'm going to just data point, and you notice that it is integrated with AccuSnap, so you can snap to what you need to. Data point, you'll see there's a line being drawn. That line is temporary unless you check on the draw line checkbox. So if I check that on, then it will persist into the model and be there as more like a reference for you. So I click my 2 points and then it calculates the slope, and now I can place that slope or that annotation wherever I want. I can change how many decimal places I want. If you have an exaggerated view, you can change the exaggeration. With the other one, you can change it to a percent or ratio. So all that stuff was already in the app, or really just added the place by 2 points. So hopefully that alleviates some issues. That is a static label. It's not like it's going to dynamically update or anything, but simple app, but I think it serves its purpose, and hopefully that will help you guys out when you run into those kind of scenarios. So that's really it. So that should be going out in the next update, or I can't remember. You can check the update doc. I don't remember if that got out in the last push or not. So that'll be, if it's not out, it'll be out in the next update for you guys. So as a quick demo, moving on to our workspace. Just some quick updates on our workspace and some reminders that hopefully everyone's already aware of. That since the release of ORD 10.10, side-by-side installs are now possible. So that adds, I guess, another layer of complexity to configuration, which I'm not going to get into. Just want to remind everyone with that side-by-side installation, it does mean that the product is being installed in a different location as well. So you see I have some snips up here of like the install folder or the folders that you see. So that could lead to some problems with configuration, third-party applications. So you want to, as you go this route, you want to kind of vet that out when you implement it. So it's a benefit that you get to run multiple versions, especially if you're working with different DOTs that require different versions to be used. But when you do that, you want to make sure your workspace is still compatible for the version of ORD you are running. So that's just another reminder. Another reminder is we do have 2 workspaces for Connect. So we did talk about it before. Just another reminder, the main difference is that the second version, V2, uses Calibre as the font, whereas V1 uses Arial. So that change is the main reason why we created a V2 workspace. Is not because like ORD 1010 came out or anything like that. The reason why there's two is because the font change. So with the V1 workspace, it's compatible all the way back to 10.5. Hopefully no one's still using that. There is a sync tool with that one. With the V2, I'm not done with that sync tool yet. Haven't gotten around to finishing it. I started it, but that workspace was initially released with ORD 10.10, so you can't use that in previous versions because the files won't be compatible. So that one is 1010 and newer, and that's the one that we really want everyone to start moving to. So new projects, make sure you're starting. Last time we talked, we had the original timeline that said we were going to update both workspaces up until a couple weeks ago. Per user request, we have decided to continue updating both workspaces. So we're going to try to keep updating those to make sure everyone gets all the updates that aren't font related. But eventually we will, move to just V2. So hopefully that makes some people a little happier, not as nervous that the support's dropping. So moving on. A note just on some service requests that I've been getting about the Create Worksite application. So the first thing is I have not updated that application to understand the new location of ORD 10.10. So if you don't have ORD 10.9 installed, the application doesn't know how to start that background instance of ORD to then associate the seed files to that workset that was just created. This only affects people outside of ProjectWise because you don't have to worry about that with ProjectWise. So when you're running this outside of ProjectWise, the last step of the project is the last step of the worksite creation app is to assign your seed files to that workset so that you don't get that annoying workspace mismatch message every time you open the file. So if you run into this, you're going to see that an instance of ORD opens up to the screen and the app just keeps spinning. The app is waiting for that process to end, but since it couldn't find the right workspace or workset, it couldn't run the background process, and so it just started it up. So you can just close that instance. The app will say it's done. The only thing that failed is assigning those worksets or the seed files to the workset. So all you got to do is open each one time, get the message, assign it to your workset, and you're good to go. So I know that seems tedious, but I am working on updating it so that you don't run into that issue anymore. So just bear with me. If you are running into that, just know that's what's going on. So it's not like it failed to create the workset, it just failed on the last step. Okay, if you guys run into problems with that or questions with that, feel free to email me or rather submit a support request, and then we can talk more about it. So moving on to recent updates, which I better move on or I'm not going to get through my section. Reminder that that running updates doc is a really good reference for you guys. I put a screenshot of the previous releases that we have made, so you kind of see the dates of when we pushed out updates. And then just a couple notable updates. There was this problem with the Survey MVBA having dependencies on Power Geopack. So we didn't really notice it because most people have Power Geopack installed with ORD. But there was someone that finally brought it to our attention that it wasn't working, and it came out that it didn't have Power Geopack installed, and it was needing that. So the VBA annotations, when you process survey, those weren't coming in. So we went in and figured that out and fixed that, so that MVA is now not dependent on Power Geopack anymore, which is good. We updated the user prefs, so when you reset user prefs for ODOT, the floating origin will be toggled off now. Probably should have done that a while ago, but it's in there now. The Create Worksite app, I updated it so that the worksite config also puts the version of the app that was used as well as the username of who ran it. Just kind of a little bit more info for you. I added generic utility node feature definitions for all of the utility types, so communication, gas, electric. Before there wasn't really generic nodes in there, so you couldn't place things graphically. You can only extract from graphics. So now those nodes are in there. I fixed the generic node, so it was incorrectly set to an outfall type, so it wouldn't let you connect the pipe to two generic nodes because it would have two outfalls. So you probably saw that. I was telling everyone just go use the generic headwall one. I finally got around to fixing this one. I don't know how it got to that, but that's fixed. The sheet seeds, I removed the scale bar from the bridge site plan. So that was a comment we got a couple times, but scale bar shouldn't be there. So we updated that sheet seed. And then I would just say go look at the update doc to see the rest of the updates. So now quickly moving on to ORD 2021 release 2. So Bentley's latest release of ORD is out. It's still a 1010. So there's no compatibility issues between the 2021 release 1 since they're both in the 1010 version. So that's why I call it a minor update. There is a link on YouTube to a bunch of videos that Bentley put out on this release, so you guys can check that out. I'll try to post it in the chat later here. That'll have videos on all like kind of the new things. Some other things is they enhanced the station offset reports, so you can report directly on 3D linear elements and survey features. So you don't longer have to convert those to geometry elements to do a report on them. They also multi-threaded several processes that use name boundaries. So we should see a lot of things go a lot faster in when you're using like name boundaries, like quantities or end error volume reports. Bentley has claimed gains ranging from 7 times to 18 times in performance gains. So that's a little tidbit for you. You guys might see that go faster. They did add an earthwork option to only show like removed quantities and not showing fill. So in case you've already put in something for fill in your template maybe, and you were getting kind of double quantities and you had to remove one, there's now an option that you can set to say, hey, when I run my earthwork, you only do the cut. And then another, probably the biggest update is white space management. And so I was going to show a video from that Bentley YouTube channel because I think it shows it really nicely. So let me play that here. Let me actually go to YouTube and get this thing full screen for you guys. Skip that. And you guys aren't hearing that, are you? I shared my sound. Oh, yeah, I only shared my PowerPoint. Let me reshare. My bad. And it won't let me check on include computer sound. Seriously? I guess I will try to talk over it because it won't let me check on include computer sound. All right. So I probably won't do as good a job as Derek, especially because I wasn't planning to talk over this. But white space management has been kind of an issue that people have brought up time and time is, when you auto annotate something and you want to shift that annotation a little bit to be in a better spot, when you re-annotate, it then goes back to the original spot. So here's what Bentley's came up with a pretty elegant solution to this, I feel. And so this current release added this for linear elements right now. So that's the first thing I want to point out is it's for the linear elements here. So if I remember right, he's showing the old version first. No, this is the new version. So when you place an annotation and you click on that annotation, you're going to see that there are some options now that you can change how that cell should move if it's ever reprocessed or if the alignment changes. So he's going into settings and showing there's this manage modifications option. So we'll probably go through our settings and change some of these features or annotations to have this on. But by default, it's going to be off. So it's going to act like the way it acted before. So when you do your annotation and you reprocess it or you change your alignment a little bit, it's going to move back to the original spot by default. But it's very easy to come in and change that just by selecting your annotation. So he should be coming here, and when he selects the annotation, any minute now he's going to select that annotation. You're going to see there's this location option in the heads-up display. So it's on default, but you'll see there's relative and there's fixed options. So I think he left it as default. So he's moving it, and you see how it automatically changed to relative. So just by moving it, you see that it switched off a default to relative, and now he changed the alignment, and you notice that it reprocessed that annotation, but it left it relative. So it says, hey, you moved it here. I'm going to keep it relative to the alignment about where you placed it or where you moved it to. And now it's fixed. When you see change it to the fixed option, and now you see it's not moving at all. So we can do that for our linear annotation right now. And it's pretty easy to switch. So we'll probably go through, as I said, and change some of the default annotation. But as you can see, it's pretty easy to switch that just by moving it. It's switched to relative. So I think this answers a problem that a lot of people have been dealing with. So I liked it. I think it's a pretty elegant solution to the problem that Bentley is calling white space management. So I think I'm going to jump forward a little bit, save some time, and I think he also showed when you cut sheets. That might have been a different video. Let me see. I might get getting ahead of myself. So he's copying. He moved and he copied, and you'll see that the location is set to fixed. So when you copy annotation within the same file, it still stays smart. It still manages the location. So you can see that those values just updated because he changed the alignment. But if you go into a reference and you copy the annotation across a reference, that's when it turns to static text because it's across the reference at that point. But inside the same file, it stays smart. So now he's over in the profile view, changing some settings here. Jump forward. Where he's got a lot of wonderful things to say that I'm not saying, but it works the same way as it did in plain view. Here we're moving annotation and location changes to relative. If you change something, it will keep its spot relative to where you moved it to, and the values will still be smart or dynamic, so that values will update. So just noting if you do copy it across a reference, like now, so he moved over to the sheet model, so that copied it from a reference. Now that text will be just kind of dumbed down static text. So I just wanted to call that out. So hopefully you guys like that feature. I think it's pretty cool. So again, you get that with the newest release. Another thing that they added was they changed the way component middle annotation works. So this is cool in the fact that say you have a curve that spans multiple sheets, you can actually get that curve annotation to show up on each of those sheets. So like automatically duplicate across your sheets, which is pretty cool. They added that. So there's a video on that on the YouTube. I didn't have to include that video. They also added annotate all reference elements. So before you could annotate, all elements in the model. They now added a checkbox to include references, so you can annotate all the references elements at the same time. End area volumes from multiple corridors on cross section that's kind of what they added. So they pretty much changed the way that the volumes kind of annotation table gets placed on your cross section. So they changed it so you can place it as a grid annotation instead of a point annotation, which kind of opens the door to these more capabilities of dealing with multiple corridors and whatnot. So I'll touch on that in a second here. So something specific to drainage now with this update is a lot of people I've seen the support requests come in where they were losing their graphics out of their file, and they get some message about it not being in the database or being out of sync, and then it would just remove the graphics. So with this update, they kind of fixed that. So they're going to give you an option now to keep the graphics. So that's great, right? You don't want to lose those graphics. So I'd like to see that. That might solve some people's problems with losing data. The cover depths at nodes was added as well. So you can now set your like mid-max depths at the node for the conduits. So that was something I think Geopack drainage could do. So they added that into the product. There was another issue with projected profile runs not projecting correctly. They would look like they were flipped or going in the wrong direction. So they fixed that issue. So I grabbed a screenshot of that. I think I just stole from the video. So on the left, you saw kind of what it was doing is this pipe was drawn backwards, basically. It had to do with the directions and how you made your profile run. So in this update, they've addressed that issue, and you can see on the right side that it's showing correctly. So that was a fix in this one. So quick note on drainage, which I feel like I feel your guys' pain on the drainage side of things, and I feel like there's a general faith being lost in the software when it comes to the drainage stuff. So I did reach out to Bentley on this topic and kind of let them know of what's going on, what the general perception is, and they are working to fix that and kind of address the problems people have been running into. But a couple ones that they kind of called out to me was there was a bug where the conduit's elevations was snapping back to the invert of the node. So I think I've seen that come in a couple times where the invert of the node kept, or the invert of the conduit kept changing to match the invert of the node, and people were basically losing faith in the software because they couldn't rely on the invert elevation that they had entered in. So they did say that they fixed that in this release. And then another thing that I wasn't aware of that I want to make sure everyone was aware of was a workflow problem that could be causing a lot of people's issues is basically you can't copy your drainage file that contains your drainage and utility project. When you do that, it's causing problems. So I have a link here to a wiki page on the Bentley communities that talks more about that. But basically, don't make manual copies of of a DGN file that contains that project. So you want to give this page a look if you have done that. So it kind of goes over the problem and what's happening and how you can tell. So I want to end with annotation. I feel like we're almost to a good point. We really need that single source of truth implemented, which they've told me they're working on. So I'm turning efforts back to the plan prep graphics and some of the things we need the product to do better. And Bentley is aware of it, and all I can say right now is that they're working on it. So stay tuned. I think there's good things coming that will address some of our plan prep issues on the graphics side of things. So stay tuned on that. But I wanted to add that page in there to kind of maybe alleviate some concern people might be having or call out some things. So lastly, with the this newest release during our testing, some things that we found. Really, the two things what we really found is one, any of our VBAs that places a cell broke in this update. So it would basically just cause the whole application to crash. So that is our Signs app. So anyone that's using that OHDOT Signs app, when you go to place the cell using that app, it will cause a crash in the newest release. And then that Seals app that Mark had just showed, that also places the cell and is a VBA. So that causes the crash. The Sheet Cells app is actually an add-in, so it's written in C#. It's not a VBA, so that one does not have the problem. So I filed the defect with Bentley. So I got the defect number. I'm still trying to get a word on when the fix will be. I think what I plan on doing here really quickly is going into those apps and seeing if I can just switch the code to use key-ins and get around the actual VBA problem itself. That's not the best solution, but I think I can get it working that way so we get these apps working. The other thing that we noticed is your earthwork area volume table is annotating large. So basically it's scaling it at the scale you cut your sheet at. So if you're just cutting like a 5-scale cross-section sheet, that table is coming in 5 times too large. So I mentioned earlier that they changed it so that you can place it as a grid annotation rather than a point annotation. So we will be working on updating it for that. So for now, that table is coming in too large. I also want to look at fixing it for the current problem. So if you already have this standard started and you want to keep using that sorry about that, my mic turned off on me. So if you're using that point annotations for your EAV table, it's going to come in large. You can click on it and you can see the scale and you can change the values and move it back over, but that is a problem right now. So will OHDOT be moving to 2021 release 2? I was kind of hoping to see what Bentley's response would be on the VBA defect, and if that could be something that could be addressed relatively quickly before we would move to it, or I got to fix these VBAs before we would move to it. So right now we are not moving to it, but I think there's a lot of good things in there that we want to get to there. So we just need to flesh out, I think, a couple of issues to determine what we want to do. So with that, I have a poll for you guys. Let me paste this link over into the chat too. Should have had it ready for you guys. It's a Q&A. So if you guys could, I want you guys to click on this link that I just posted, or there's a QR code if you want to scan it. And it is a quick 3-question poll. Bring it up over here, which I guess I'm covering up the QR code now. So really, I just want to know basically what company you work for. Have you started using the latest release, so 2021 R2. I guess I should have put an NA in there in case you just don't know. Hopefully you know what version you're using. And then lastly, would the breaking of that Signs app and the Seals app prevent you from moving to release 2? I'm curious to see if those would affect you guys, if you would feel that that would warrant not moving. So go ahead and give that a response. And I know we're on a little bit of lag, so I'll give it a little bit of time here. Let's make sure we get some responses in here. It's like the OHDOT people are responding. They don't have permission. Oh, whoops. What did I do wrong? Ah, only people. Whoops. That would be helpful, huh? All right, did that change the link maybe? Let's see. Try again, guys. There it goes. I see some externals. All right, there's like 200 attendees. So expect to see more than 30 responses. Oh, forgot to move that slide to the front. All right, there we go. I like to see those. So 90 responses. Nice. So looks like there's at least some people that have already moved. And some people that need those apps to work. So again, I'm going to try to see if I can get those apps working. So I'm probably going to work on that tomorrow, see if we can get that working. But thanks for the responses, guys. That's helpful. And I think with that, I am done with my part. Let's see if there's any questions. Doesn't look like there's any questions. Cool.
Yeah, I think Matt's been kind of keeping up on the questions that's been coming in.
All right. Well, I will turn it over to Matt.
And there's probably a few questions that were just published that don't have an answer. I guess I messed that up in the Teams event. I responded to the people that asked, but when you publish it, if you respond and then publish it, it doesn't apparently get posted. So if any of those other questions that don't have an answer there, if you want to circle back on that, we can. So let me see. How do I get it to share? Okay. All right, let me change. Okay, so I'll try to pick up the pace a little bit. These first two topics are sort of repeats of some presentations I've given in the past few months. So some folks, it may be repeats for at least one of them, but I'm guessing based on the audience that we've had for those, it may not be a repeat of both. But as far as OpenBridge Modeler or Designer goes, we announced this at OTEC and then at one other event recently. And we wanted to announce back then that we had released a beta workspace that was available November 1st of last year. And that was built on, at the time, the 10.10 release that they had. Just recently, they put out another release to 10.10. I think it's the version numbers are similar to ORD 10.10 20 dot something else. So it was built on the OHDOT CEVO2 workspace. We really didn't have any plan to also incorporate the version 1 workspace. At the moment, there is no ODOT training resources available like we have for OpenRoads Designer. We'll get there as we get through some of the workspace setup. Currently, we're recommending to use the Bentley Learn content, and when this was originally put together, they were adding new content for the 10.10 release. So like I said, we announced this at OTEC last fall. We had also sent out an email blast to the CAD user list. So if you are on, received the invite for this, you should have received this beta workspace announcement. We had a plan to also announce it at this meeting last December, but that meeting ended up not being held. So just wanted to make sure we're covering the entire audience base. So far it's available by request. We don't have it published for download anywhere. We kind of want to track who has it, and that way we can sort of form a beta workspace group. So anyone who requests it, we're going to ask that you be part of our group. And I intended to do this much sooner, but hold a meeting of some sort with those users and get some feedback and move forward from there. So if you would like to request the workspace, go to the CAD service request page. JD, do you mind posting that in the chat?
Yeah.
And then there's a category there that you can just select for the beta workspace request, and it's pretty easy response. We should get back to you pretty quickly on that. That's the same workspace or support request form that we use for other things. So the OpenBridge sort of toolkit of products includes several things here. So there's OpenBridge Modeler, which is a standalone installation. It also includes Pro Concrete, and I put an asterisk here that some functions are integrated. So the current release actually has full-blown Pro structures inside of it. It will consume a full license of Pro structures. So depending on how your agreements are with Bentley, may depend on how or which products you install and use. OpenBridge Designer includes the suite of analytic products such as LeapBridge Concrete, LeapBridge Steel, RMBridge. It also includes OpenBridge Modeler. So, and then there's Pro structures would be what you're going to use to do your reinforcing in your concrete substructures and beams and things. So again, depending on how your licenses are set up or which you want to use or how you want to do it, it may make sense to give the production group, may not be a bridge designer, but going to do the planned production, to have them install OpenBridge Modeler and reserve your OpenBridge Designer licenses for those bridge engineers who are doing those analytic things. So here's the last presentation I gave on this. I said I sort of regretted putting a timeline on this, but here's how we got there. So at the end of 2020, OSE reached out and started talking about wanting to do this. They are engaged in the AASHTO BIM for Bridges and Structures Pooled Fund, and that's a fund made up of about 20 states and FHWA and the AASHTO Committee on Bridges and Structures. So they're developing industry foundation classes. So IFC, you've probably heard that word before. and also creating some model view definitions or, level of design guidelines that will serve sort of as a standard, not only for any of the Bentley products, but for any software vendor. So that's all sort of being coordinated with the help of a company called Building Smart International. And so that's sort of where OSE was coming from. They're investing in this from that front. So they wanted to get some movement from, internally to get some stuff set up there. So we got looking at it, we started to develop Bentley's workspace, copy it, sort of modify for our needs. And then, we just sort of paused with other priorities. And then beginning of 2021, we used a success play with Bentley and held some discovery meetings where, they were helping us to develop the workspace a little bit further. And we sort of established this timeline of October of 2021 release for a beta release. And we did meet that. And then it was anticipated that, well, we continued to work through that, coordinating with OSE and Bentley. Bentley reviewed our workspace, provided some enhancements. And part of the success play was Bentley was going to develop these custom parametric abutment cells, which meet our standards. And that process has actually gone a little bit slower than I anticipated. So we had expected, once this was released at the end of October, or for that November timeline that we had, let users start doing some beta testing, collect some feedback, obviously continuously develop this and develop some training material. Here we are in, April timeframe. We've received a little bit of feedback. I think just 2 or 3 users have sent us a few things. So we're kind of collecting that, but I'd like to get a larger pool of feedback from folks. And then, we were sort of hoping for an official release kind of the summer of this year. Well, that was an aggressive schedule, so I expect that to slide more towards the end of the year. And like I said earlier, we wanted to announce it to this CAD user group, and we ended up with some other priorities that have pulled us away. Some of the new versions of ORD, and then just recently, the beginning of March, the latest release of OBM 10.10.20.91 was released, and that has a schema change and as well as a bunch of enhancements that I think we'd like to incorporate before we really have what we're going to call a final release. So Alex at Bentley was kind enough to let me steal a couple of slides that he's presented. So I just have 3 from him. There's the version number. And like I said, there is a schema change that was just released a month ago. It is built on the MicroStation platform of update 16.2, just like ORD is. And there's some other version numbers that it's listed what's also installed there. The primary enhancements to that release are these approach slabs with the optional sleeper slabs. Before, the recommendation was I think that it is still to create an approach slab using an additional bridge deck, but now you can add the sleeper slab options there. They added some of the abutment back wall enhancements, so you can add a corbel or a notch to the back of the, can't remember if our standards show that. I know our approach slab definitely does. For steel beams or roll beams, they fixed some orientation issues so you can make them normal to the profile. So if there was and then added some haunch enhancements there. So I think the way it was before is if you had, the camber on the deck, it would, now the beam lines are normal to that rather than being vertical. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of the dark theme. I wish they'd invest time in other things, but if you like that, that's enhanced in that version. So there's some additional enhancements here. I'm not going to go through each one of these, but you can see they put a lot of effort into this release. So here is a same demo, and I had probably worked through this maybe a half a dozen times as I was just trying to test and do different things when I created the video. once I sort of got an idea of, you know, a handle on what I was doing, I'd say it probably took an hour. This video I did cut up a little bit and sped it up, you know, obviously just to make a quick demo out of it. But here I'm going to go in and just create a quick bridge. So I'm going to add a bridge here and basically just identify the center line and give it a name. So you don't really see anything in your view. Then we'll go in and create some support lines where your center lines of bearing. Here I just keyed in the station where I want it to begin, gave it a spacing and a skew, and those are placed on my drawing. Next we'll go in and we'll add a deck, and you'll select a template, and these are very similar to templates in ORD. So we have a few templates in here, and they can all be modified while they're being placed or even after it's being placed. So here I'll select this deck template, and it has a 20-foot width. I'm going to change it to 22 feet for both the left and right side. So there you can see in our 3D view and in the 2D view, or the plan view, actually Bentley recommends using 3D. I did do a 2D and 3D here, but anyways, it was placed in there. Then we'll go in and we're going to add in the beam line. So I add 5 beams. I add a little spacing off the edge of the deck and how I want that spaced. What I'm trying to do here is I move the guide out. There's a validate button that should show you the beam lines. And for whatever reason, it wasn't working there. I don't know if I was doing something wrong or not, but when I hit place, you'll see that those beam lines are placed. It's just the beam lines themselves. There's no beams are actually placed yet. So next we'll go in and we'll tell it what type of beam we want to place. So here I'll select, I think I chose one of the OHDOT AASHTO modified beams. Gave it the haunch there. So I'll select one of the OhioDOT and the that modified type 4. So then it places those beams in the view. You can also sort of see the haunch was placed in there. And you can see now also the way the end of those beams are clipped. That's another enhancement that was in the 1010 or this newest 1010 release. Those would be normal to the skew. So now I'm going to go in and add in diaphragms. So I'm identifying the spacings where I want those to be placed. And here where I can hit the validate button, you see those are placed in my plan view there. And I realized I didn't set them up for the second span. So I add that in, hit validate, and you can see those there. So now I can hit place and they're actually drawn into the model. And I must have had something wrong with the feature definition color there, but at least you can see you can differentiate between them at the moment. So now I'm going to go place a pier here, and currently we just have sort of what Bentley's provided. We can come up with some better examples or templates as we go along, but you have some different options as far as how to place the cap and where you want the footing to be placed. In this case, I just put it 3 feet below the DTM surface. You can specify that at whatever elevation you want. So here I have a pier with 2 columns, and I want to modify that. So we select that in our view, we get into this substructure template, and I'm going to change the cap length and height, width as well. And then I'm also going to change, the diameter of the columns, and then I'm going to add a 3rd column in the center. And then lastly, I'll go in and I modify that footing. Just want to combine that into one. Change the dimensions a little bit there. And then here I'm going to go in and add the pile layout, and you can specify the embedment length, and you can spec the steel shape you want. And then you can go in and give it the clear distances or the margins there and the number of rows and columns, have it generate that pile layout. You can also do battered piles. I didn't show it here, but those can also be done. Hit OK, and in a couple of seconds, my model is updated. And next, we'll go add in some abutments. I just show this using what they delivered out of the box, like I said earlier. Bentley is developing some parametric cells or generative component type cells that will incorporate our standard abutment types much better. So there I placed an abutment, so on the forward end, and then I'll actually place both of them there. And I'm going to go turn off some levels just so I can see what's going on, and do a zoom previous, and then we can go back to where we were. And then you can do wing walls separately. In what they're creating for us, it'll all be included with a bunch of variables that would be set. But if you wanted something just for a quick public meeting exhibit, you could do this really relatively quickly using whatever is provided there. So next I'm going to go in and place the bearing pads, and I turned off the other levels so that we could see them as they're being placed. And I'll just select those support lines and set all the feature definitions and materials that I want. And those will be drawn in there. And we'll also add in the steps on the pier and the abutment. And I think that's another enhancement in the current release, is how that can be handled as well, or at least the pier cap can be done a little differently. So I'm going to go in now and place some barrier. Again, it's just similar templates to what we're sort of used to using. And then I tell it what work point I want it to follow. So the deck point there, it's P5. It follows it on the left edge. I'll go do the same thing for the right side. So there you can see we pretty much have a complete bridge model done here. There's a lot of other detail that can be added. Again, I didn't include any approach slabs here. I just wanted to show that even a novice can go in and start to do some of these things. And then you can change the display style and how you want to view it, whether you want wireframe or model. I kind of like this transparent view here, especially when you start to add in your reinforcing, you can see those things in there. So one of the last things I think is pretty handy is we can go in and add in the excavation limits here. So for the pier, it's in the middle. I'm going to go in and add in the excavation and show the limits. I can calculate that earthwork and also, see the limits in the plan view. Now you'll notice the DTM that I'm using, or the terrain I'm using, has a void under the existing bridge there, but I wanted to point that out as well. But you can see there that, it might help me determine where I might need some sheet piling or something to protect those existing lanes that are beneath. And again, I just go in and turn off a few things. So now what I'm going to do is I turned off those, and I'm going to go to some of the sheet settings here, and I can quickly create a pier, a plan sheet for the pier substructure here. And there's probably some cleanup for sure that we need to do here, but you can see a plan, the pier plan, the cap, the elevation view, a section view, and then the footing plan was all put in there at once. And these all just create separate drawing models, and they can be turned on or off as needed. You can see a few dimensions are placed in there. I can also annotate this like I would any other detail. And then you can see those ones that I modified or added there. And then if I want to clean up the sheet a little bit, I can move those reference files around, or I can just move the border in this example. I think the border, the way we originally had it, was a reference file attachment, which that's since been changed. So that's a quick plan sheet. Next, I'm just going to go in and quickly show how you can create like a transverse section. It takes it right from the model, and in a few clicks I have a section there. I didn't create or put it on a sheet, but it's just, you could just attach it like you would any other reference file. And I have this drawing model that I can go in and annotate like I would normally. So you're just using the regular MicroStation dimension commands. All right. So like I said, I'm sure there's other folks out there that have more experience doing this so far than we have. The CAD and mapping office is not super strong in bridge design. So I have some detailing background. I'm not a bridge designer, so we remember this is a beta release, and at the moment, use it for your project delivery at your own risk. But because of our, what we're doing here, we want your feedback. We want to know what works, what doesn't, and how we can make it better for anyone that's going to use it on an ODOT project. So do we have any questions on that, JD? Got a mouthful. I don't see any questions, so that's good.
Yeah.
Maybe I just talked too fast. So,
Just came in.
okay, what is the current status of the abutment cells? So that's a good question, and like I said earlier, that's gone a little bit slower than what we anticipated. I've been letting the guys in OSE review those as Bentley's created them. I think we have 2, maybe 3 of the 4 types. Well, we've reviewed them and provided comments back. So I don't know that we're ready to share any for testing yet, but hopefully I'd say within the next couple of months, we'll have something that we can get out there. All right, so I'm going to keep going, and we can come back to other questions, or we'll get them later just to get us back on track. So the next thing I was going to talk about was what we're calling E+ plans. We've developed some pilot projects to use what we're, large format plan production, and we sort of dubbed it E+ plans. And my dad joke here is that it's not because of my last name. It was based on the sheet sizes or paper sizes that we elected to use. So we've created some guidelines here, and I don't show the whole guide here, but we have a total of 6 pilot projects, and I'll talk about that. Well, at least 5 so far, maybe 6, where we're going to use these large format sheets. And this sort of came out of an idea from an ODOT ACEC ORD production group, where there was a discussion on creating a pre-stage 1 submittal, and it was thought that that would be helpful to addressing plan production changes that resulted from stage 1 geometry comments. And we all get it, right? You produce your stage 1 plan, and then there's some geometry comment that comes in, and you got to go back and reproduce all those plan sheets because the alignment moved or something. So when that idea started being talked about, I thought, boy, we used to really do that. So if you're going back to the 90s in the L&D, this is from I think the May of '93 volume. Yeah, we had a line grade and typical submittal, and this was required on most projects that had any sort of alignment change, whether it be horizontal or vertical. So from there, when you read a little bit further, it also said that full size plans were preferred for projects where only minor changes were done, but then we had roll plots or roll plans were preferable when newer revised alignments and grades were involved. So in my mind, that really wasn't a new concept. It was just we got away from this when the current PDP process was released in around 2004. So that was the line grade and typical submittal was kind of removed. So anyways, we just got to thinking more about like how can we help not only consultants, but anyone delivering plans, internal or externals. And so we created some role plans here, and we updated or have I'm calling it an addition to the workspace at this point. There are some drawing Cs, a sheet board or cell libraries, and some print drivers that will be added to your project workspace. And I have instructions on how to do that, for those projects that get there. If it's hosted in the ODOT data source, we can take care of that from CADD and mapping. No other user interaction would be needed. We can just add that in. If you're a consultant working on one, like I said, I have some instructions that it's pretty straightforward. And really, at this point, this is only going to be used for any approved pilot projects. So here's the sheet sizes that we were looking at. And when a lot of people think of roll plans, they think of some roll plot that's some infinite length, and we don't want that. So we want something that was sized to fit, you know, on a conference room table reasonably, and or on a tailgate of a pickup truck in the field. So these sheet sizes seem to work well. On the left, you see the D size page that we're all accustomed to, 22 by 34. E size is a 34 by 44. That's a traditional ANSI E size sheet. And you can see how it breaks down with the other sheet sizes. So an E size sheet can be easily reproduced at a half size on C size paper. Obviously you need, you know, a larger printer or plotter to make that happen. So then we wanted this larger format sheet to be a little bit bigger to provide, to reduce the number of actual D size pages that we're using. So there was a little bit of method to my madness here. There was, I went with a 34 by 66. So that basically meant I added one more D size sheet, portrait rotation to the E size page. So I called that E1, I think, in the standards. And part of the reason, well, the biggest reason I did that is if you're using the standard cross-section offsets that we have in the workspace, when you plot those on this size paper, they will fit with those standard offsets pretty nicely. And then if it's decided for whatever reason we don't want to go with that roll plot for cross sections, the last release of ORD 1010 include the ability to recut the sheets only, so you don't lose those drawing models or have to redo any of that work that was done. So here are just a few examples. This would be the E-size page. So maybe something like an intersection detail or a side road. This would reduce, probably save you 2 sheets here at a 20 scale. I guess I didn't mention the idea here is the plan scales will all remain the exact same as we've normally done, so that you can still do a 20 scale plan and profile or 50 scale plan and profile. It'd just be all on one larger sheet. So you could do like an E-size page for a side road, or maybe a schematic plan if you were trying to fit it all on one sheet. And then here is the E1 or that larger sheet with a plan and profile view here. This reduces 3 D-size pages onto 1 basically here. Same thing with the plan type view, and really some of the feedback we heard right away is this is really the view that most people are wanting, especially for maintenance of traffic control type plans where we can see almost an entire phase on one sheet. So the contractors are really liking this. The other DOTs that have done something similar, they're saying the contractors like this. It's easier to hang up in the trailers and take out into the field, see the whole MOT phase at once. We mimicked some of the other plan sheets, profile. So if you wanted to do that, I suppose there's probably enough room. You could do 3 profiles onto here at the moment. We have only set it up for 2. So here's a cross-section sheet using those sort of standard offset widths that we have. And I just wanted to show that there. And I used a small example just to show that if I want to go to, if I want to change those offset widths, obviously that wouldn't go back to a D-size page as nicely as the original, but we can fit more sections onto one sheet if we wanted to. And go in the other direction, if you're working on an urban project or even a divided highway project and you needed to show a larger cross section, we can modify those widths when you create the drawing models to do that, so that we eliminate the need for match lines. So we had our first pilot project was in District 8, and they were already scoping the consultant to create some role plans for their review purposes on top of the traditional plan production. So they went ahead and did that. They were a little bit ahead of where we were at as far as creating some standards, and I'll show an example in a second, but you can see the quote from the ODOT PM. Everyone loved it, especially it made ODOT's review significantly easier. and the consultant didn't have any complaints either. District 4 has 3 projects. They're upcoming projects that they're going to start to pilot. District 6 has one where they're considering using it on, and District 12 also has another one coming up that we're going to try and do this on. If you have a project, I would advise you to contact your ODOT PM and make sure that they're on board with something like this. We don't want to go back and change or modify projects to do this, especially if they're beyond stage 1 or something like that. If you want to contact me to discuss this and see if it's a good fit for your project, feel free to reach out and we can talk about it. So like 5 or 6 pilot projects is probably pretty good, but it may not hurt to have 1 or 2 more, especially if they're you know, a quicker schedule. So maybe something that needs done relatively quickly. All right. So here's one of the examples from the D8 pilot. They use a little bit of different size than what we were hoping, but that was because they were ahead of us and just needed to get done what they wanted. They use color for this geometric review. There is no real standard as far as using color on this. That's just what they did. And maybe the district asked for that, I don't know, but it worked out really well for what they needed. Since then, I did go look in ProjectWise, and I think they're using the current paper sizes that we have. So I haven't heard any complaints or any problems, so I need to check back in, but it seems to be going pretty smoothly. All right. Any questions there? Is Bentley providing any customizations in OpenBridge sheet development to match what is more typical to ODOT plans? I guess I would need more exactly what you're asking there. We can customize that on our end. That's probably more up to us to develop the workspace to do that better. But I don't, we need to know more of what you're asking there specifically. So this may have been covered earlier. Is the plan to use OpenBridge Modeler to all our structure sheet production and modeling, or is the plan to use OpenBridge Designer for that? So, okay, so the question here is the plan to use OpenBridge Modeler for all the sheet production? So if you're going to create the bridge model, we can then extract the details and things to create the plans production. If you don't create the model, then you're just using your regular workflows that we always have. The difference between OpenBridge Designer and OpenBridge Modeler is that Designer includes those analytic products, so the LEAP and RM Bridge, and those can create those beam, and I don't know, I'm not even that type of user, but those analytics can be taken back and forth into the models itself. But the model then, OpenBridge Modeler is where you would create the plans production. And not sure I understand the last part of that about the ORD workflow, but anything modeled would be different than ORD. It wouldn't work in ORD. And I suppose you could cut a section through it. It would probably still see it. So the question here is, are E+ plans intended to use those sizes through final plans? Yes, it would go through final tracings. We did talk to construction and contracts, and everyone seems to be on board with that for these pilot projects. Will this update allow you to manipulate the name boundaries? No, you can't really manipulate a name boundary after it's been placed. The sheet Cs that are included with the E+ plans have name boundaries for those sheet sizes, but you can't really modify them after they're placed. It's really no different than what GeoPack was when cutting sheets. Has there been any consideration to start incorporating more color in plans? I'm gonna.
Yes.
No. Yeah. Yes. That's a question for Mark, I guess.
Yeah, we've been talking to contracts about that, and they said they don't have a problem with us incorporating color into plans because for their reproduction side, they, since it's a PDF, they can just filter the print queue to black and white. So we are kind of, I guess, on board with that. We're just, trying to figure out how we want to do it. I know there's been some talk about just filtering color on utilities, but then there's also been discussion about making the whole entire plan set color. So I think it's going to be a little further discussion, and of course that stuff needs to be updated in the PDF submission, process, which if we can get it finalized, would be the July update. So that's something that we are considering.
All right, so one last question, then I'm going to move on just for the sake of time. We'll get to the other questions if there are more. Are roll plots mainly going to be used on larger realignment projects, or would be smaller maintenance type projects that could include? Yeah, I think that the maintenance type projects could be, applicable to that workflow as well. I don't see why we couldn't do it there. Did I answer that good enough? Okay. Yeah, we're not saying we have to use it at this point. And I guess I didn't really say that part of this is to reduce the plan production efforts by designers and be able to focus more on some of the modeling efforts that we need. And this would be a stepping stone to getting us more towards model-based delivery is what I'm calling it at this point. Kyle's going to talk about some of the BIM initiatives going on, but other DOTs are starting to do the same thing. Florida is doing something very similar. Pennsylvania and Michigan also have some sort of roll plots included with their models as legal document type submittal. So we're sort of mimicking what they're doing and trying to reduce some of the plan production efforts at the same time. All right, where's my okay, so the last thing for me is file naming conventions, and Mark mentioned earlier we were looking for ways to handle projects better that have multiple entities working on those. So I had been brainstorming for a while, but here is so we're considering a revision to this. So there's nothing changing. Don't expect to see anything immediately, but we're throwing out some ideas, and we're going to get some feedback here in a minute. So there's the current file naming format. I didn't list all the bridge, culvert, walls. They're all would have a similar revision. And so I started brainstorming some things, but really, why is there a need for a change? And the biggest thing is we need to eliminate duplicate file names. And I know on projects that I've worked on before, this kind of always has been a challenge when we were working with sub-consultants. You might have one team doing half of the project or doing some of the alignments, and they would create a BP 001 for their portion, where we would also create a BP 001 or a BK 001, or also the survey files or the alignment files that are being delivered. So I don't think it's a new challenge, but in some things that we've seen recently, it's became more apparent that we need to address it somehow. So why are there duplicate file names? Again, there's really several reasons and not really new problems. A lot of it stems from just multiple entities working on different portions of projects. Maybe ODOT internally we're working on something, and then the prime design consultant is also working on some stuff, and we name files the exact same. And then as we exchange the data, it gets confusing as which is which. And really the last bullet point I'll get to second is the biggest problem. Another example would be when surveyors are delivering horizontal alignments for an existing route, and then the internal designer needs to add a proposed vertical alignment. In ORD, there's no more of the GeoPack GPK database. So that vertical alignment must be added to that same DGN as the horizontal alignment. GeoPack, we didn't care. You could have done that in any DGN. It just saved it in the GPK file. So at some point, someone needs to take sort of ownership of that. And what we found is, the surveyors are delivering a BK001 file, and then that's getting copied over into the engineering folder. And now there's 2 files with the exact same name. In some cases, 2 or 3, 4 in different folders in a project. And I won't go into all the details here, but if you're using ProjectWise and you run the scan references and link sets tool, that will go through and it will find the first instance of that file name and repath your DGN to find that file. And it may not be the one that you were expecting. So for example, if you had files in the scratch folder, it may find those, or it would find those before it's going to go look in the base map subdirectories of the engineering folders. So we spent a significant amount of time working on fixing some of those issues that have happened internally to us. So, all right, so back to my brainstorming idea. So I started thinking of things and thought a new naming convention's got to be flexible enough to accommodate design build projects. Projects with task orders or multiple locations. So the districts do a lot of projects where there's multiple culverts replacements and they're not always on the same route, or maybe not even in the same county, but they're all under one PID number. Design build projects, you have a lot of buildable units that it would be nice to sort of be able to better handle or manage which DGNs go with which buildable unit. Projects with multiple phases or parts, whatever you might call them, part 1, part 2. It might be nice to separate those out a little bit differently. And then really projects with heavy collaboration, multiple consultants, agencies, whatever the case might be. I mean, we've all done it to some extent. We've managed it different ways, different projects. On the left side of this, one of the things that I've always done as a minimum was to use kind of the file numbers to identify the alignment. So on the left is another page from an old volume 3 in the 90s where we used the location code sort of shown there, and that was useful. And I remember using that convention on a couple projects. It would help at least identify which files were for the main line, which were on ramps and things like that. On the right is from a fairly recent project that I had worked on, had a lot of different alignments. It was a total of, I want to say around 2,000 plan sheets. So we identified, or we had, early on, we knew we needed some way to differentiate what sheets were going to be or how we're going to name things. And we had multiple designers, not only for the firm that I was working for, but we had several sub-consultants working on this with us as well. So we established this at the beginning, and just by looking at the file name, we could determine, or we knew which GP sheet. For example, if it was looking at GP 501, I always knew that I was looking at a ramp ES sheet, or the alignment file for that was 501, or the cross-section sheet was 501, that sort of thing. So it made it pretty easy. So some version of this may be what we end up going with, as well as some other changes here that I'll show, or some other ideas. Here we have, well, there would be a minor, in my thought process here, it'd be a minor folder structure or name change. Folders that would end in the 00 would be reserved for ODOT use. And then folders that would end in 301, 401 would be reserved for the prime use. And then you could then divvy up the last couple of numbers however you needed for additional consultants that were working on that. That would also help when we receive files from a consultant as a deliverable. We know where those files should go, and we're not overwriting or trying to incorporate that maybe in work that ODOT users have done. So this is the sort of what we've came up with as our best idea right now without kind of redoing or starting over. So we'd like to think about incorporating this LLL code. There really was no reason other than location for that one. And this could be optional, and it could be 2 or 3 digits, however you wanted to break it up. We could say LO1, LO2 for location. It could also be used to place a buildable unit number for on a design build type project. So BO1, BO2, etc. Or lastly, it could be for those multiple part projects. So PO1, PO2. Fairly straightforward. And then the CCC would be a 3-digit number that matched the owning agency or consultant that owned that document. So it would match the folder number where you'd be working in the folder structure. So 301, 401, etc. I think that's. So here's just a couple of examples. So the first one there would be in the 400 folder would be BK001. That would be the ODOT geometry file for whichever alignment we decided to use. And then the second example there would be location 1 for the prime consultant. Oops, my slide's wrong. Location 1 for the prime consultant, that'd be their BK geometry file. And again, you can see the last folder there would be the sub consultant or survey consultant, be something like 302 or 402, and that would be their BK file. So that sort of helps as you need to copy things back and forth. Let's say you need to copy that existing alignment file and you don't, we want to retain the survey, what was delivered from survey in their folder, and then we can copy it over and rename it. And then that designer sort of takes ownership of that file. Here's some other ideas that were probably unlikely to be considered. The first is sort of what we've been, I think I might have messed up my slide there. First is what we've sort of been telling folks to do is by replacing the first digit of the file number with the last number of the folder. So for example, where I see have the yellow C there, that would be like if it was a 301 folder, they'd make their file BK 101. That didn't lend well though for those multiple location type projects, because that was also what we were telling folks to do for those. So site 1 would have been 101, site 2 would have been 201. So we could have incorporated that LLL there as well. Just didn't seem to do a whole lot. The bottom example there, it would include adding the alignment name to the file name. This didn't really go over so well in our group, so probably won't do something like that, but that's the idea that I was going with there, what I was thinking of. And at that point, if you did something like that, the file code or that number would kind of be optional. And really, when it comes down to the plans production, you really were recommending 1 sheet per DGN in most cases anyway. Excuse me. Anyway, so so we may not always need that, but we, you know, there's probably a lot of different scenarios at play. So that's what we've sort of the 3 ideas that we've been tossing around. Like JD, I have a poll here, and I'll slide back over. Let's see. I'm going to ask you to go in. There's just 3 or 4 questions there about your ideas. Opportunity to provide your own feedback. If you would like, if you have some better idea, throw it at us. If you see any pitfalls with what we've proposed there, put those in. I'm not going to show the results live. We'll try to catch up on time here, but I will look for any other questions. Do what? Oh, I haven't looked at it. Dan asked, can we go back to the bridge SLM numbers? We'll have to talk about that. That was before my time. I don't remember the logic I was told, the idea there. All right, I think that's all I have, unless there's any other questions.
All right, thanks, Matt. So I'll go ahead and keep us caught up on time here. So I have a couple technology kind of initiatives and updates to make. So they're kind of varying topics, but we'll go ahead and kind of go through all these lumped together. Feel free to type in any questions. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the deprecation of the U.S. survey foot and the transition to the international foot. So this is going to be a pretty significant change for people. So I guess if you didn't know that there are two different versions of the foot measurement. So the new international foot and kind of the older U.S. survey foot. So the difference is about 2 parts per million, and I'll talk a little bit about that, but there actually are some differences that you're going to be able to see inside your planned production workflows. So like the name says, U.S. survey versus international feet, that change really stems from the National Spatial Reference Frame and its transition over towards the international foot and making everything a little bit more uniform throughout the world, instead of having this singular definition for geodetic type surveying purposes. So who's using the U.S. survey foot? Really, it's only surveyors, and it's not all states have the survey foot legislated. So Ohio is one of those that actually has the U.S. survey foot legislated. So that'll be another change that's going to end up happening really soon as well. But this is gonna end up impacting everyone, especially when we start looking at historical documents and things like that. So I mentioned the difference between the two different feet definitions, two different foot definitions, and that's 2 parts per million. So in a million feet, a million U.S. survey feet, we're only going to have 999,998 international feet inside of that definition. So it's a little bit shorter distance. And that really happens due to the international foot to meter kind of translation. So the international foot to, which is 1 foot, is 0.3048 meters exactly. Whereas the U.S. survey foot has a more of an approximate answer, and it's normally calculated by using that fraction there, that ratio of 1,200 divided by 3,937. So why does this really matter, and what situations is this going to really change anything? So we're really not going to see it in lengths and distances. So you don't have to go throw away all of your rulers that you have and things like that. That's not going to, you're not going to see that change. But where we are going to see that change is when we start talking about state plane coordinate systems and UTM. These are really where we're going to start having some potential mix-ups in those coordinates. And the reason that happens is really because of the large false northings and eastings that happen inside of those state plane coordinate systems. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later as well. But is U.S. survey foot really going to go away? Unfortunately, it's never really going to go away, because a lot of our coordinates that we might have on things are going to still be valid in the future, but we're going to need to know whether that's a U.S. survey foot or an international foot coordinate, because you can start to see once we're into those millions, like our false eastings, we're going to end up seeing some of those 2 foot differences in a point. And really, this stems back to like I said, the change to the NSRS and the standardization that's happening. So this is really trying to clarify and clear up all of the differences that have happened throughout the history of that foot definition. So this is kind of going back into I believe it was 1959 when they made that change to the international foot for all other types of measurement besides that exception for the geodetic applications in surveying. That's really where that foot definition has stayed. So this is kind of clearing up all of that over that history. So I know if you've ever seen any of Ray Foos's presentations at PLSO, he'll go into a nice big long dissertation about the differences between them, how they spawned to begin with. So feel free to ask any more questions on that. So what does this mean for the workspace? So we're getting ready for international feet. We've already started working on converting that V2 workspace to have a component of international feet. So I stole these two slides from JD to add a little bit more humor in there. But really, our goal is to not make a third version of the workspace. Everything is going to be set and defined on the work set kind of level for these. So we're really going to need to be diligent with all of our seed files, all of our working units that we're using, because you will start to see a difference in our planar coordinate system based applications. So really, when you're measuring lengths, distances, things like that, you're not going to be able to see the difference. But once you start incorporating coordinates and coordinate geometry with that, that's where you're going to start seeing some of those more differences. So we're going to give you a little bit more information closer to when this is implemented, and it's stated to, or it's meant to be changed January 1 of 2023 is when that difference is going to happen. So that's going to be nationwide, not just Ohio. So we're trying to be a little bit proactive and trying to make sure that everything we have will be compatible to be able to function within that transition and that shift that's going to happen. So feel free to ask any questions about it, but mostly it's going to be our sheet seed definitions that are changing. And then there's a couple other things that we're also cleaning up, some of our working unit definitions and things like that in the back end. But really the main takeaway from this is we're not going to make a third version of our workspace. We're going to just be incorporating this into the V2 part of our workspace or version of our workspace to be able to move this forward. So be looking for that in the future. So you might start seeing some different definitions being incorporated in with our standards. So we are actively working on that to be able to transition smoothly once that January timeframe hits. And as far as projects go, I think that is kind of up in the air, but I'm thinking more once projects are started, that's when that transition is going to happen. I don't see a big shift of translating older projects to that definition. But I guess that's more just my opinion and not ODOT's. So my next topic that I'm going to talk about that's kind of tied to the survey kind of aspects of things is the incorporation of low distortion projections, or LDPs. So this is along the same lines. We're going to do the same transition during the same international foot timeline as well. So that January 1st of 2023 is when we're going to see these definitions being started in an ODOT application. And really, what it's going to do, it's going to help us be able to mitigate some of the issues we've historically had with transitioning from a grid to a ground-based coordinate. So kind of moving into the future and what that's going to look like. Right now, Ohio has 2 state plane zones. We have a state plane zone north and a state plane zone south. In the future, we're actually going to be moving to a single zone that's provided by NGS for the National Spatial Reference Frame. It's going to be all tied into that. So really, this single zone is really going to facilitate all of those statewide type applications. So OGRIP, any of our large database like TIMS and things like that internally, this single zone is going to help mitigate some of the issues we have with reprojecting and things like that between the 2 zones. It's going to be a transverse Mercator projection if you really want to get down and nerdy with the details on the definition of that zone. And basically 98% of the state is going to fall within that 200 parts per million definition there, or a 1 in 5,000 air tolerance. So for the surveyors that are watching, 1 in 5,000 does not meet our conveyance standards for accurate measurements. So we need to do something on top of that in order to be able to meet those conveyance standards. And how we're going to utilize that within ODOT is we're going to use low distortion projections. And they're going to be county-based. So this is going to be on the national kind of registry. We've already got approval from NGS to be able to do this. They've approved our designs that we've done. And really, the goal is to be able to have our linear distortion reduced to 10 parts per million or less. So basically a 20 times reduction from what we would see from our single zone that we're going to have in the future here. So we have our preliminary approval for all of our designs, and we are going to implement this on that January 1st date. So this is really going to replace the concept of taking the state plane coordinate system, scaling it to the ground to be able to minimize those distortions. So really what we're going to move forward with is almost 88 smaller little state plane coordinate system zones, and then those will be scaled to match their particular county. And if one of the questions you guys are going to ask is, what if it's just out one of my project crosses that county border? There is a buffer zone that's going to be available within that county to be able to do that. So this would be, instead of setting up that custom DTY file with your scaled project adjustment factor, you would just assign that county coordinate system to it, and everything would be working basically on ground coordinates, but you would be in a grid-based system. So to kind of look at what that ends up looking like as far as our parts per million throughout the entire state, here's a little map that was put together for our review of our 88 different zones. So some other states have this. We're not the first to do this. Oregon, Indiana, I think there's a couple that I can't remember off the top of my head that also utilize this as a part of their state systems. So you can see where we're minimizing all of our distortions here. So we're going to meet that 1 in 10,000 conveyance standard without having to scale coordinates. And it's really going to help with those distortions that we get from taking that spherical earth that we have and being able to put that into a nice planar surface. So that's kind of the difference between those. So really our maximums that we're going to have is about 30 parts per million in some areas, which is well within our tolerances. So I kind of wanted to show a couple examples to make it a little bit more practical, because it is a pretty high level topic as far as using a low distortion projection, and where do we start to see some of those differences. So I have a couple bridges that I'm going to use as examples from a couple different locations. One of those is going to be the I-480 bridge here in Cuyahoga County. So if we took our state plane coordinate grid value, that distance is 4,191.68 feet would be the distance kind of across that bridge. And if we scaled that to ground, we're seeing a difference, or that ground actual measurement is going to be 0.3 of a foot difference in our measurement. So those ground distances are all going to be the same, because that's what we would measure if we were actually physically out there on the ground, whereas our grid system is going to fluctuate a little bit. So with our low distortion projection, we're going to get rid of, instead of having that 0.3 of a foot of air, we're going to be around 0.009 of a foot of air, and our parts per million is going to be around 2 parts per million. So we're really removing all of those distortions that we would have from working in a grid system and translating that to that ground measurement. But not needing to have a project adjustment factor for every single project. We would be able to work inside these grid systems that basically mimic what that ground would be doing, that ground-based coordinate system. The other example I have is the Jeremiah Morrow Bridge, so kind of moving into Southwest Ohio. So that grid distance, we're at 2,224 feet, and we start to see a difference of about 0.2 of a foot compared to a ground measurement if we were out there to actually take a ground measurement. So moving into that LDP system, we would see about 0.004 of a foot of air instead of instead of around that 0.2 of a foot. So we can continue to work kind of in that grid system, like I said, and it kind of really shows the differences that we would have between those two systems and being able to translate between them. So the idea is we're going to have all of our coordinate systems set up inside a DTY file to be used in our Bentley products, as well as a PRJ file that's going to have those for other applications. That's a little bit more standard, as well as some coordinate system files that you can use with data collectors out in the field. So that's what we're going to try to provide for ODOT-based projects, and then I think in the future, this is going to spread outside of ODOT as well. I know a lot of the county engineers are looking into this as well for their applications, because then they wouldn't need all of those separate individual scaled projects. They can have everything on that same coordinate system. And it's also going to tie in with the future transition to of the NSRS whenever that ends up happening. So I don't want to get into too many details on that. Yeah, so there is a buffer zone. There was one question that was how far outside of the county lines is the buffer zone. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I can look that up and get those values for everyone. They are defined inside the systems themselves, so I can help with that. I want to say it's about 10 miles or so. That's just from my gut reaction. So I'll have to take a look into that. And then once you start getting further and further out, that's when you're going to start seeing some increased distortion from where that coordinate system was based. So depending on, you could use it all the way on the other side of Ohio, but you might start seeing some of those distortions. So it's really trying to balance where it's going to be applicable for your particular project. So hopefully that helps. Will OGRIP TIFF georeferences be adjusted? So those, they have a coordinate system tied to them. So even historically, they're not on the current NSRS system. The 2011 adjustment realization, the 2010 adjustment of that coordinate system, they're actually on HARN. So when you do bring them in, they do reproject already, even though you don't necessarily see the changes. They do have that geo information embedded inside the file. So those files should reproject in the software. This is just another coordinate system. No different than us using state plane. We're just going to have a lot more of those state plane definitions available. So those are some great questions. So in an effort to kind of keep us on time, feel free to keep asking questions about it. But I'm going to go into kind of my last topic, which is building information modeling for infrastructure, or BIM for infrastructure, and talk a little bit about what ODOT's doing on that front. So it's a really big buzzword nowadays to be talking about BIM for infrastructure. And I kind of taken a quote from the U.S. Department of Transportation and their definition of what BIM is. So basically, it's that collaborative work environment for managing all of our digital data and information about our transportation assets. And it's to kind of transition that information across all of the life cycle, from planning, design, construction, all the way into maintenance, and then inevitably the retirement of that asset. So what that means for ODOT is really what we're trying to determine inside this this particular initiative that we're doing. So there are some benefits to BIM that have been pretty well documented. Like I said, it's a pretty big buzzword in the industry right now. A lot of state DOTs and other entities are going and looking at generating and creating their BIM for infrastructure plans. And so really the idea is to be able to eliminate all of our inconsistent data and terms, and being able to utilize and share that data across the enterprise. And being able to have that actionable data when you need it, and having it up to date when you do need it. So that's kind of some of the definitions that I see, some of the big overarching benefits to it. So what that really means for us is we're trying to figure out what BIM means to ODOT, and then all of our strategic partners as well. So we are doing some internal polling as well as a few external users. So if you are interested in being involved, please let me know. We'd love to get some feedback and input, maybe some best practices that you've seen in other states as well. and trying to develop what BIM means for ODOT. And we're really trying to develop some realistic next steps and a general recommendation for what ODOT's future is when it comes to BIM. So in my mind, BIM is something that we've been actually doing for a long time, but we're really starting to formalize this process, being able to provide that data across the enterprise in a uniform, normalized manner is really the direction that I see BIM going. So a lot of people tie BIM with the 3D model itself. I think it's a little bit more than that, but the 3D model is going to have a lot of that rich information that we're going to be able to extract and utilize in different methods in the future. So being able to see our clash detections when we move into the construction phase, being able to pull geometric information from those assets as they're brought through that life cycle is going to be really a big factor to be able to utilize across the enterprise. And like I said, we're really trying to figure out what that means for Ohio and what it means to be able to move that data efficiently. And we don't want to necessarily rewrite all of our processes that we use, but we want to try to enhance and try to find some areas where we can improve some efficiencies between those data exchanges, whether it's data that you start with for the design process or being able to accurately and efficiently move that information from design to construction and make that data usable. So whether that's moving into a more digital format, the 3D model, being able to send line strings to a contractor and stand behind that information. So that's what we're really trying to kind of figure out with this initiative and going through and trying to see what that means for Ohio. So it doesn't look like there's any questions on BIM. I know this was a really high level introduction to kind of what we're doing, and we're really in the infancy of what those definitions will end up being in the future. But I wanted to make sure everybody was kind of aware. If you want to be involved, please let us know. And we're always looking for some input to this particular topic as well. So that's all I had as far as my presentation goes. So I know I hopefully got us back a little bit closer to our time frame. But I don't know if Mark, if you had any closing remarks to make or anything like that, or any other questions.
Yeah, I don't. It looks like we don't have any questions currently, and we're 15 minutes over. So I guess my only comment would be we're going to go ahead and close the event now. And if you have some additional questions, just submit a support request through our website as a comment or question, and we can filter those additional questions that way, just for the lack of time we have left here.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks,
Yep.
everyone.
Alrighty. Yeah, so we will have this recording up and posted. So if you want to review that later, and then JD will be sending those CPDs out via email afterwards. Thank you for attending today.